Sorry to be so late.
Not late, right on time.
Yeah, right on time. Okay, 4:00, 4:01. I'll call the meeting to order. High Valley Sanitary District Personnel Committee. 11th, 2024. Don't have any 2449 requests here. Any public comment?
I have no speaker cards, but we do have public on, so.
Nobody's got a hand up or anything, so.
Lynn, Liz, or Mark, I see a hand raised. Please go ahead.
Good evening, or well, it's evening here in Florida. It's still afternoon there, I guess. This is Mark. Just a couple quick general comments, touching back on last meeting real first. Well, actually, the first thing I want to do is remind the board and the council that legal counsel works for the board. They don't work for the GM. And I also feel that if we're going to talk about ex parte communication, that question also has to go to the GM, who is the most likely to be the nexus of a multiple conversation that would have the greatest risk to turn into a special meeting. We talked the GM gave you a pretty amazing, huge brief on retiree medical. I could poke holes in it for an hour and a half, but the biggest thing I am the one, by the way, he was talking about. I also want to remind the committee that there is one active employee that gets his medical fully paid for as big as he wants. I'll leave it at that. I did talk to CalPERS, and CalPERS told me that trust fund retirees could have a separate designation from active employees, just like you can take one active employee and give them a much higher allowance than others. So that's something I guess the committee needs to look into a little deeper. I also want to comment on the actuarial value of $4 million over the next umpteen years, approaching the trust fund level of $6 million. That makes no sense at all. The actuarial over a 20-year period compared to a trust that has been growing exponentially and hardly gets anything taken out of it now, I would expect by the time you realize that 4 million, that your trust fund is going to be pushing to the 12 or 14 million dollar mark. You're not going to be able to exhaust it. People run up against Medicare, and then once we take Medicare, which by the way, I'll be on the same plan. I'll still be on the CalPERS Platinum plan. No difference, especially since my wife is younger and I still have a son on the plan. My share will go down quite a bit when I have to take Medicare as my primary. So that being said, I take that because I can. A lot of your retirees don't because they can't afford it. It's costing me almost $700 a month extra out of my retirement to cover that, when it shouldn't be. I mean, the trust fund is there, and I believe Bill can let you know because he was present when they built the trust fund, and he knows more than anybody in the room how that was intended to be set up. So I would also like to encourage the board to make no changes to salary structure or anything else until after the personnel surveys are done. You're going to learn a lot from the personnel surveys, and I would hate you to go down the road and change the makeup of the employees or change salaries or change titles before you get the employee's input. It really isn't fair that the employee's voice come after you would make changes. And I would also like to see the raw salary survey posted on the website, so the public who paid for the survey can actually see the nuts and bolts of the survey and not an interpretation of the survey. That's all I got tonight. Appreciate you letting me talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else out there in television land wish to speak on this set of items? Right? Well, Misha, I think you're up.
Thank you, Director. All right, same question as last time. Do any of you directors have any disclosures of ex-party communications related to the subject matter of the Personnel Committee that you have not already disclosed? Director Quilici,
No.
Director Stone,
No.
Director Kentosh,
I have no substantive information that is relevant to a matter under consideration by the board.
Thank you. I'm finished with my part.
Very good. Let's move on to item 4, proposed overtime and double time policy changes.
Before we get into the nitty gritty, I just have kind of a big picture item I'd like to talk a little philosophy. That's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. When I first read the board packet a couple days ago, I thought, oh, this is going to be a pretty simple board meeting. You know, it's very focused. And by the way, just a side comment first. It would always be good to leave broad a little bit, how our agendas be a little broader in scope so we can talk about other stuff. And note the agenda is very specific. You know, OT, double time, standby rate, and classification, description, recommendations. There's really no room in here to talk about other things. Like I had some ideas on the cafeteria plan I wanted to share with you guys, but there's no item. So I just encourage you in the future to have a little bit broader on the agenda so we can, if the personnel committee can talk about other stuff that we've been talking about last several months, several weeks. So anyway, when I read a couple of days ago, I read the agenda packet, or I didn't read all the job classifications. I'm not really qualified to go into that level of detail. And I thought this is going to be pretty straightforward. It's very focused. But then I did notice a couple of things about it that were kind of gnawing at me. One was that we have a new position or a revised position of assistant general manager dash engineering. And I thought, well, I wonder if that's going to be a new position or they're going to promote Liz. I have no idea. And then I went back this morning to reread the thing before the meeting today. And I looked very closely at the recommendations you made, Jeff. And it seems like we have 2 layers of decisions that we're making today. One is that we have the things that you've asked for very specifically. But the other is, are we approving today a major reorganization of the district staff organizational chart? Because if I look at the wording of the resolution, there's one little phrase in there. When we get to the resolution, I'll bring that up. But are we approving and was curious to know, and personally, I'm uncomfortable as a director telling you how to organize the district. Mentioned a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned that you were going to change the number of supervisors, and there wasn't going to be a treatment plant supervisor anymore. And I expressed my concern about that. And I still have concerns about that, but I really don't have any idea what our authority is. And I don't know as a board, because I don't want to tell you how to do your job. And so I'd like to start with a general question. What is the board's authority compared to the general manager's authority? Because I'm not afraid, I'm just thinking that if we approve the things they've asked us to approve today, we're going to have locked ourselves into a reorganization of the district that we haven't really discussed. And maybe it's not our responsibility to discuss it, but I have to admit I'm remiss. I have never looked at the enabling legislation for wastewater districts. I am very familiar with the water code for establishing water districts. And so I just grabbed my copy that I keep close at hand. See, what does it say the board does, and what does it say the general manager does? It says the general manager shall ABC have full power and authority to employ and discharge all employees and assistants at pleasure. So to me, that kind of indicates that at least if this was a water district, the general manager would have an authority to reorganize the district with our board approval. And then there's another phrase in here, item D, it says, fix and alter the compensation of employees and assistants subject to approval by the board. So he can set up his own organization, but he needs board authority to do it. So my question is
Yeah.
compensation. So he could hire somebody, he just couldn't pay him without our approval. So my general question is, are we approving today, or will the board approve our next board meeting, new organizational structure? And if so, what's the authority of the board compared to the authority of the general manager on that? It's a fair question.
Sure. It kind of goes to the philosophy of a general manager versus a district administrator. Do you, the board, want to have operations and O&M sort of directive power to how the district is run? Or do you want to defer that to a general manager and have policy level decisions made by the board? It's really an overall structure approach on how you want to proceed. The way our district is certainly is currently structured in our bylaws is the board provides policy oversight and the general manager runs the district and is responsible for the everyday operation of the district. You, through the budget, approve how many positions are approved for the district. I can't go hire 50 people. I'm limited to 21 people. That's the way the budget reads. The salaries you determine because you're in charge of compensation, and the way you've chosen to do that is through a salary survey and do comparable analysis to other districts and then decide how you would like to proceed. You don't have to approve a salary that's comes up in a comparable. You can set those salaries. You can set them whatever you would like. The board has chosen historically to do a salary survey and generally have a competitive salary structure compared to other districts without specifying 10% above median, 10% below median. You've never taken that exactness. You've said, we'll look at it on a case-by-case basis through the personnel committee and through a resolution adopting those salaries at the board of the overall board. So I think how we're operating today under the bylaws is you, the board, set policy, you, the board, approve a budget, you, the board, have said there's 21 positions available for the district to operate, and you, the board, have said here's the salaries for each of those 21 positions. That's what you have done. The rest of the operation is deferred to the general manager to implement that policy. Now, if you want to change that and modify that structure, that is entirely within your purview as a board. However you want to do that. More hands off, more hands on, entirely discretionary how you do that. But what we currently have is something that's a more traditional board sets policy, general manager hires and manages staff.
By the way, I did look at the bylaws this morning and I couldn't find in there where it defines who sets the project or the organizational chart.
Well, the organizational chart would be mine too. Now I presented to you to say, here's how we're going to operate. And the organizational chart that I have presented to you, it says, here's the roadmap for the district for the next 20 years. These are the steps. No, we're not promoting anybody to director of engineering, but it's to say in a future state, in a future condition, that would be an appropriate position for a general manager to have 3 direct reports: operations, engineering, and administration. That would be very traditional to have those.
We have 2 assistant general managers.
Yep, we could potentially have 3, one in operations, one in admin, and one in engineering.
They'd all be assistant general managers.
And the role of an assistant general manager is someone who can fully step in if the general manager is on vacation or away. They would be able to fully step in and do all those tasks. If they're not able to, they wouldn't get that promotion. This is a skills-based promotion. This is not a time-based promotion. This is not a, you've been here long enough, here's your promotion. This is a, you can do the job, therefore you get the promotion. These are skill-based, knowledge-based, experience-based promotions, not time-based.
But once we approve this stuff today, including the classification and job titles,
We're not approving that. We're
well, okay, recommending.
So you're recommending approval to the board for these sets of titles to generally be used to describe the job that each position would do. Now, there are more job descriptions than there are people. There are not 21 job descriptions and 21 people. There's more job descriptions because there are several places where there's a ladder where someone can be an admin specialist 1 going to a 2, or a customer service representative going from a 1 to a 2, those sorts of things, or a project manager to a senior project manager. So you're approving, these are the descriptive pieces of information that someone has to be able to do to get the promotion. One of the reasons we write these job descriptions is to say, here's where you are today, and if you want to get a promotion, here's the skills that you need to be able to have to implement this promotion. You can't just have a job description for where they are and have no job description for what they could become.
I have no problem with that. Well, once we approve this stuff at the next board meeting, I gotta that straight in my head because I know we're not approving anything today. You can basically just fill all these positions at your discretion.
Correct.
Okay, you guys comfortable with that? Oh, Bill, I need to defer to you. You've been around. You actually signed or were on the name is on the bylaws from 2014. So you've been around for at least 10 years involved in this practice. What is your view?
That's always very well. We haven't really had issues with general managers not being able to carry that out. Make the decisions they need to make to put the people where they're at.
Okay.
It has never been, I never remember the board sitting and telling somebody they had to do something or a general manager.
Okay. Well, I'm comfortable with it. I just want to know when I'm voting for something next time, what I'm actually voting for. I'm voting for giving him the authority not only to create these job classifications, but to fill them as well.
I already have the approval of the current structure to fill them. What I don't have is I don't have the new words that describe what I'm going to fill. When I go out, if the board approves these job descriptions, we have 2 admin positions open. If the board approves these job descriptions at the March meeting, if you recommend today and it goes to the board in March and we approve those job descriptions, we can then go out and recruit based on those job descriptions. We need to put out a flyer to say we're going to hire somebody and they need to have these skills and they need to have this experience, and this is the metrics that we're going to use to do our interviews and to do our ultimate hiring. I don't have that piece of paper to hire that person because this is a new job description. And so I'm going to use the new job description to go fill those administrative positions based on the new words on the new piece of paper.
It does seem a little odd to me you're presenting this with us without having given us a chance to look at the actual classification study itself. Not that I would promise to read it, but it seems like, haven't we been given the classification study again?
Well, we've tried to do this in chunks. This is a exhaustive study, and we wanted to go through it in bite-sized pieces. At the March meeting, the consultant who prepared the study is going to give about a 30-minute presentation on the study. You will have seen all of
In 2 weeks, then.
correct. And you have all seen all of the benefit comparables. You have all seen the salary comparables, and now you're seeing the job descriptions. Those are the 3 pieces of the study.
We have their actual study in the board packet.
Yes.
Next 2 weeks.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm satisfied with him having the authority to do this. I just wanted to know what do you, Steve?
I am. I've been in several regular corporations, I'll call them, for years. General manager's position here is kind of a combination of CEO and COO. But the board has duty and responsibility of any corporate board of directors, and that is to set policy. then the CEO or COO executes that policy. Where you draw the line as to what's policy and what's execution can be debated, but I'm comfortable with the division that we have right now.
What is going to change to?
I don't think the duties are going to change any. We're seeing what looks to me like a logical potential future organization of the district.
I guess the one thing that kind of raised my concern, and I'm going to defer to Jeff do it how he wants to, but we have quite an outstanding water treatment facility, wastewater treatment facility down there. And to think that there's not going to be a plant supervisor in charge of that, it kind of just makes me sit back and go, oh, whoa. It's a pretty big facility not to have a supervisor, but if you think you can make it fly, I'm good for it. Anyway, I wanted to start with philosophy. I'm ready to go to item 4 now.
The division of administration, engineering, and operations, basically, where operations is both collection system, treatment plant, is fine. If the thought were that we should have 4 potential assistant general managers, that would be okay too.
I would not ever recommend that. I like having an operations manager. I'd have a treatment plant supervisor under the operations manager. Then he could.
Oh, another
layer, I guess, but
middle management.
another layer, but on the other hand, it's a pretty dang important facility down there.
That is.
So if there's an emergency, I want to have one guy. I think he's responsible for that, not be worried about what's going on over here, over there. But I'm going to defer. I wanted to just talk about this for the sake of making sure we're all clear and on the same page. Other than that, I'm perfectly happy. I would eventually, I do eventually want to look at your enabling legislation because I've been meaning to look at that. What are we forming?
1923 law.
Or the Sanitary Act of 1923.
Sanitary Act of 1923. I'm going to look that over and I'm sure I'm going to find something to scratch my head about.
If you go to, it's probably in the health and safety code.
I don't remember the exact one. I think it's in health and safety.
You know where to look in the legislative.
No problem. Okay, by the way, I'm good with 4, 5, and 6, so just when you're presenting your presentation, you'll have to convince me of too much.
So these are, we've been chewing away at the class and comp study and the personnel handbook in chunks, in manageable chunks. So we didn't have to spend 3 days straight on all this. So what we've proposed here are some things that we've kind of come to some conclusion of having some, I think some consistency in how we would want to approach these 3 things. The first one is overtime. We're governed under Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA, for overtime, which basically says you don't get overtime pay until you have over 40 work hours in a week. And so that word work hours means something. Work hour is not vacation, it's not sick, it's not holiday, it's not bereavement, it's not jury duty, it's work time. So in a week when you have 5 days, if Monday's a holiday and you get paid for it, but it's a holiday, it's not work time, and you work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you've only accrued 32 work hours in that week. If you work on Saturday, you don't accrue overtime until you've exceeded the 8 hours for Saturday. Given our structure and given the requirements that we're asking our employees to do in terms of working weekends, doing certain things, that just seems like we were kind of
Short Saturday is going to happen more often than not.
To me, it's hard to ask somebody to work Saturday and come in and bring their full A game if we're not paying them overtime when they've already worked 5 days that week. The other thing that I have a concern about is if someone takes a half day for sick time for a legitimate reason, Well, the sick time's not work time. And so once again, if Monday was a sick day and they worked Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they've still only accrued 32 work hours during that week when that sick time they could have been sick, or they could have been taking one of their children to a dentist or a doctor's appointment. And so now they're starting to choose which day to schedule kids' dental appointments based on whether or not they're going to have to work Saturday. And if they do take them on Monday, they're going to lose overtime for the Saturday. And so you have people making personal choices about medical care based on when something is approved for overtime or not. And I think it puts employees in a tough spot. So what we've proposed is that we define the hours based on paid hours, not on work hours. So in that, going back to that week designation, if Monday is a holiday or they took Monday off for a sick day, that a sick day, holiday, vacation day would count as paid days. They get to Saturday, they still get the overtime.
PTO is a holiday.
Correct. So we define the words and the accumulation of hours based on paid hours, not based on work hours. So, you know, it removes that hindrance to asking somebody to work a Saturday if they're not getting overtime, or to work a Saturday if they took Monday off or it was a holiday. So I think there's some good approach to sort of a more generous definition of the above and beyond the FLSA. Now, if you recall last personnel committee, under Leeward Cassidy, you have the discretion to make these changes. These are not law-based. These are, the minimum is FLSA.
That's a floor.
These you have room to move. So this definition, you have complete discretion to make this approval if you so desire as it. The second piece of the equation is, yeah.
Well, Your Honor, I agree with everything you're saying, but the wording in your memorandum doesn't seem to quite agree with what you said in words, which is on page 4 of your memorandum, it says recommended overtime policy. It is recommended that the district operate a more generous overtime policy, blah, blah, blah. The overtime eligibility beginning after 8 paid hours in a day. Well, if that were literally correct, you left out the 40 in that recommendation, because if somebody worked a regular Monday through Friday, it was 40 hours, they came in on Saturday, this wording, unless they work 8 hours on Saturday, they're not going to get overtime for Saturday.
The FLSA 40 stays in full effect.
Okay, well, if you leave that in the recommendation, that would be.
So FLSA 40 stays in effect, and we add the over 8 each day, and we add the based on paid days. So that gets you counting vacation, sick, holiday.
Well, you write your staff report for the board meeting, you might want to just.
So we'll make sure that's a little clear, but that would be
8 hours in a day or 40 paid hours.
and paid.
Paid, yeah.
We'll list what's paid so that there's no ambiguity over that. And then the second piece of that is if you go over 12, then there would be double time. It's a little bit more consistent with sort of labor practices, you know, out there. Now, there is, and you know, the one caveat, and I've had a couple of discussions in-house, there still is a definition of a day. A day is midnight to midnight. You know, if you work from under some extraordinary circumstance, you come in at 4 p.m. and you work till midnight. Well, that's 8 hours. You know, if you
Because that's your shift.
right under some weird circumstance here, if somebody came in at 4 and you know on a rainy day, and they came in at 4 p.m. on a Saturday, and they worked 8 hours, and then they went past midnight. Well, that starts a new clock. You know, you don't get over 12 in a row because you work till 4 a.m. You know, there still is a definition of a day.
I think you don't want to say 12 continuous hours or 8 continuous hours. But if somebody is working 4 to midnight shift every day and they have to stay 2 hours one night, then when they do their shift the next day,
They would
they'll
get,
get those 2 hours back.
right. So it's just that it's not a rolling 24 hours. The day is a day, midnight to midnight. So with the over 40, the over 8, and the paid days for overtime, and then the double time over 12, I think we have something that is a little bit more accommodating to the work that we actually do, some of the circumstances that we ask our employees to work under, and is a little bit more generous, and you have the discretion to do that.
The over 12 has occurred each of the last winters
Yes.
because of rainfall. Circumstances like that, it's kind of like the way I feel about police officers. You can't pay them enough. You can't thank them enough for what they do. I would be in favor of it.
So that's sort of the first topic. Any questions or more comments?
I'm in favor of it.
Yeah, no, I support the
12 hours. Double time. Perhaps we should add a category for anybody who works over 24 hours.
After 12, unless it's extraordinary circumstances, we need to send people home to get a meal
I
and
think
get
that, I think that opens up a whole different
Was a joke. but
caveat.
it's all right.
Don't have somebody telling them they need to go home.
The committee will recommend that.
The second item in this package is our standby pay. So whoever's on call works 8 hours, and then they go home for 16 hours. And they're on call.
They take turns being on.
And it rotates.
16 hours.
There's a schedule both in the collection and the treatment plant, and there's a schedule for who's on call. And they do a really great job if somebody needs to make a switch for a day or so because they've got something, you know, if they're weak on call and they want to go do something or they have some sort of circumstance, they're really good about switching a day here or there, back and forth. I stay out of that. They all have great communication and they talk to each other and a good teamwork. So if they want to switch a day here or there, entirely up to them. In a normal circuit.
Get the word to the pay system.
Right. And so, and it works really good. Been working really good forever. I don't think we've ever really had a problem of somebody needing somebody and somebody not willing to pick up a day or vice versa. It worked great. During that 16 hours, they're limited to where they can go because they have to be able to respond to an emergency. Now they have a laptop, and so they can call in to the SCADA system and see what's happening. And they will get phone calls because we have a cell phone dialer for an alarm. And so they manage those alarms and they manage that laptop interface. If they get no calls, no alarms, no nothing, and the 16 hours is uneventful, which is the hope, they get paid a standby rate for each hour that they are, you know, making themselves available to be responsive to the district. And we currently pay $2.25 an hour. So for those 16 hours, they get that $2.25 an hour if nothing happens. If they get a call out, they have to come in and respond to something or respond to something on the iPad, or they have to do some work. Then they go on to, they get call out pay, which is basically their pay rate of pay, which goes back on paid hours. So they may get overtime for that if they've already worked 8 hours that day. So they go home at 3:30, that's their 8-hour shift. At 6 o'clock that evening, something happens. They have to go on the system and do some work or come in and do some work. They get paid their regular rate of pay, whether or not, if it's overtime, they get time and a half. And they get a 2-hour minimum call out time. So if they have to leave their house, come in, do something, go back home, it may be less than that 2 hours. It may be more than the 2 hours. They get paid for at least 2 hours for that call out.
Hours or actual time, which
Actual time.
Sure.
That's portal to portal. So they get up and they throw their boots on and come in. They're getting paid appropriately for work time. And so that's not standby time. That's actual on-call, full paid hours. But if nothing happens, they get 16 hours at the 225 an hour. We did a survey of other districts similar to salaries. And on page 16 is a list of what the other agencies pay. And we're recommending $3.25 an hour, so $1 an hour raise based on that survey.
What was that again?
16.
This is item 5.
But what I find unusual about these standby rates is that it's the same rate no matter whether you have a level 1, operator 1, or you have a supervisor, they all pay the same.
Yes.
What we used to do at United was we gave 1 hour of overtime for every day that you carried that you were on call. That way the guy who makes more money would get more than the guy at the bottom of the thing.
You know,
If everybody else is doing it this way, you got Casitas, you got Ojai Valley Sand, you got Carpinteria, Mountain View, Galena. If everybody else is doing it this way and you guys are comfortable with it, I'm okay with it.
now, some of these agencies do have some differences in what they pay. Now, we can dive way down in the weeds on this. When we're asking someone to be on call, which is a requirement of their position, whether you're a 3, 4, or a 5, you have to have certain skills to make that on-call response. To have pace,
People at the lower end of these scales that are not on call.
if you're a treatment plant 2 or a treatment plant 1, you can, well, if you're treatment plant 2, you can be on call, but you also need to have a 3 or higher on backup to you.
They get, if there's a call out,
They can respond.
people that go.
Well, one person responds, but that one person has that person on backup to say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Are you okay if I do this or this or this? And so it's this, when
That count as call out time for the more senior person.
yes, yes. Now, according to labor law, anytime you're working, you're getting paid, it's work time. If you get an alarm and you're sitting at your kitchen table and you pull up the laptop and you can in 15 minutes quickly scan through things and see that it's not a big deal, reset something, whatever the appropriate section, that's still work time. You need to get paid for that legally. Well, you have a 2-hour minimum. So you get 2 hours for that 15 minutes of actual work. That doesn't mean that somebody is those are the rules. You can't just give away to the district, hey, I only spent 10 minutes. I'm not going to put that on my time card, or I'm going to save up that 10 minutes from Monday and another 10 minutes from Tuesday and another 10 minutes from Wednesday. And I'm going to put an hour on my time card, for Friday because it was all these little pieces. That's illegal. You can't do that. You have to put on your time card and legally get paid for the time you worked each day. We don't have the discretion to say, wow, just put an extra hour on your time card. No, we cannot do that. The time card is a legal document that documents the work you actually worked on each day, not in a pay period. You don't get to save it up and store it here and store it there. Can't do that. An auditor came in and asked somebody, well, what's this extra hour on Friday for? And they, well, I had a little bit of time each day and I just added it up to an hour on Friday. No bueno. Bad. That's illegal. So we pay people standby and we pay them an appropriate rate, the knowledge they have. And then when they get a call out, they get a 2-hour minimum or more if it takes more.
At whatever their rate is.
Whatever their rate is. And if it's overtime, it's overtime. And if it's enough of an emergency that they feel the need to call in a second hand and call in somebody else and say, hey, I need a little extra help because of something really odd, that person now gets the call out time to respond as well. They'll get the standby time, but they get the call out time because they said, hey, I need, an extra hand on this. We pay people based on hours worked and so forth.
All out is minimum 2 hours.
And call out's minimum 2 hours, and that's portal to portal. So if they leave their house, they drive and they go back, it's the whole time they're gone.
That's no problem with that.
I have no problem with it.
In 35, 40 years of aerospace, I only found one consultant that paid portal to portal. Seems very generous to me, and I'm sure it's important to the people that are on standby.
When we're asking somebody to either go off of standby and respond or take that phone call from, their colleague says, hey, I need some help. We're now
Position.
we're now taking, hours that they could have been not doing those things. And so to say, no, we're not going to pay you drive time. We're taking them away from their off work hours, and we ought to pay them for that time we take them away from their off work hours.
It's me, and it was always of my opinion because it was things that I personally went through years and years of on call. When you get to the point where you're taking on call and you've got that responsibility, it's a lifestyle change. It changes the way
You're at work at home.
Yeah, it changes the way you could, and even if you go through a period of a week where you don't get called out, there's still a change. It's important that people are compensated for that.
I'll never hear this.
Yeah,
Well, that's a problem.
I support the increase because all we're doing is taking an existing number and which we haven't updated since whatever it was a while ago.
Would recommend it to the board. We're on to item 6, I think.
Right. So the last item is sort of recommending to the board the classification descriptions and the salary chart for based on the salaries that we got out of our comparables. The first is the job description. So we have a binder, every job description that we have at the district. That describes the minimum qualifications you need to have a job. It describes your experience that you need to have. It describes the knowledge. It describes the job, what we're going to ask you to do. When we go out and recruit for a new position, we basically take this job description and we say, here's we're advertising for filling a position, and here's what you need to be able to do. And then a person provides that information. We go through a review process. Yes, they're qualified to be interviewed. No, they're not. Or when we're looking at what we're asking someone to do, then we make sure that the job description describes that. So we've gone through an exhaustive process with our class and comp study where we took these job descriptions. Every employee filled out a survey of their job. They described what they do. We then had a phone interview with our consultant and each individual employee one-on-one to look at the job description, look at the survey, and describe what they do and how they do it. And we took all that information, our consultant took all that information and then prepared new job descriptions, also then making sure that those job descriptions matched a similar job description for another firm, or another agency. In simple terms, a treatment plant 3 that we have matches to a treatment plant 3 in another agency, so that we are now comparing employee job descriptions to other agencies so that we have a match. We're not trying to describe some sort of hybrid that we have and some sort of hybrid that somebody else has, and trying to make some sort of comparison between these ill-matched job descriptions. So what's before you today is basically a compilation of our old job description, our employee surveys, our employee phone interview, and our consultants' expertise in matching those job descriptions to the market as a whole. These are not things that we just write and make up. These are cross-agency comparison job descriptions on an individual by individual basis. As I indicated earlier, if the board approves them, we're going to go out and recruit for our administrative help, customer service side, and say, here's the job that we're recruiting for. Now, one of the advantages of having multiple layers in a particular field is that someone can apply and we can say, you know, your skills are a level 1 or a level 2 or a senior, and we have job descriptions that specifically lay out what are the differences between those people in a ladder. So there's quite a bit of information behind the scenes from a firm that did an exhaustive interview process with our employees and an exhaustive comparison analysis between our job descriptions and other agencies to come up with these that we have today.
I looked at a couple of them. And I didn't see anything that stood out to me. Looked like they're well done, well thought out. Am I supposed to have read every one of those?
You know, again, we're back to this role.
Completely unqualified to figure out what.
Well, you know, one of the reasons we hired the firm we hired because they have this expertise to do this on a very, very detailed level. We review these and work with these every day, but I don't have a library of job descriptions from every agency or 10 comparable agencies across the state. And so we hire an expert consultant to say, hey, take our binder, interview our employees, do a phone interview with our employees, go out and look at the market as a whole, and come back to us with some expertise. Alice and I have looked at these and talked to the consultant numerous times and said, this is how we want to make our job descriptions sort of match. And you'll see on page 18 where we've actually reclassified someone, a title, because it more appropriately matches those particular job skills. And so in the process of doing the interviews, doing the comparisons, doing the writing of the detailed job descriptions, we find that our job description that describes, you know, in simple terms, an apple should be described as a pear. So we're recommending the change in that title so that that title now translates across the comparable world.
I did find it interesting that you changed engineering to administrative technician.
The engineering technician, what we found in the market was an engineering technician across other platforms and other agencies was much more CAD design driven, doing technician work in drawings, in design.
Under that assistant general manager engineering, not assistant general manager administration.
Right. So the administrative technician helps with GIS, helps with customer service stuff, helps with reading plans. We found that the title engineering technician in other agencies was much more design related rather than broad based. And what skills that we ask of a technician here is more broad based rather than purely engineering design. Almost a design technician sort of role rather than a broad-based technician role.
And the prerequisites were quite a bit different.
So are there, in the new structure, I would think of an engineering technician as someone who's helping out with engineering design, maybe even doing lab tests or at least data collection and sample collection. Is that part of this that is now proposed to be an administrative technician?
We don't do much of that heavy design in-house. So when we talk about engineering services and a technician, we're talking about sending out plans for bid, reviewing certified payrolls. We're talking about reviewing pay requests. We're talking about sort of administrative side of technician work rather than design side of technician work.
What you're saying is that is the work that person currently called engineering technician is doing now.
Right.
And maybe the common conception of engineering technician is not a job jar held by anyone here in the district or potentially needed in the district.
Correct. We don't need a full-time three-dimensional AutoCAD expert. We need someone who can review plans. We're somebody who can help and assist with plan stuff, bid sheets, bid reviews, certified payrolls, but we don't have a 3D AutoCAD person expert designing in-house plans with XREFs and all sorts of things and printing out plans. That's more of an engineering technician in the analysis across the market. So the person will do the same things. The person that's working here will do the same things as they're currently working. It's just relabeled based on sort of this comparative work. So the other thing I want to highlight and is on page 20 is on the step chart. One of the things we found doing the salary comparisons was the range of compensation for many positions was broader than our range. We have a 5-step range. In a very traditional sense, you come in as a step A, in 6 months you go to a step B, and then you go to a C, D, and E 1-year increments. And so in 3.5 years from hire to reaching the top step, that's how long it takes you to work through the A through E step. And what we found is the low at the A and the high at the E, there was a little lower low and a little higher high in many of the comparisons that we did. So the consultant has proposed a 7-step program. So you still come in as an A and you move in 6 months to a B and you go to a C, D, and E in 3. And so you go through the first 5 steps in 3.5 years. But we've added, because of the range was broader on many of the positions, we've added a step 6 and 7, but those are 2-year increments. So you go in 6 months, 1, 1, 1, and then 2 and 2. So instead of having a 3.5-year from low to high, you now have a 7.5 from low to high and a broader range of low salary to high salary. And that better represented the comparables that they found as they went out and compared all these positions to the market as a whole. So it gives people a couple more steps in classification. Otherwise, in 3.5 years, you've topped out, and the only, barring some change in your certification level or promotion, you've topped out in 3.5 years, and your only salary increases are COLAs for any more time you spend in that classification. Whereas under this structure, you now have a step 6 and 7 at 2-year increments, and so you can grow a little bit further in your compensation, staying in your same position, no new certifications. And we broadened out that section.
Top is a little higher.
Top is a little higher and the bottom is a little lower. But those numbers are not like we're making up higher or making up lower. We found those numbers in the ranges that the markets had for us. So when we take any position, we went out there and said, here's our range. What we found was the market range was actually wider. So the solution to that was a 7-step program. This also sort of loosely walks into sort of a longevity sort of structure. Instead of having just a 3.5 year to top out, you now have 2 more steps and a 7.5 year to top out.
You mentioned steps A, B, C, D, but 820 shows steps 1 through 7.
So it goes
Those are
to
the same.
Yes.
F and G now.
Right. We have a 5-step, we call it A through E. They put it down as steps 1 through 5.
Can you explain one more time? The dots on. Sorry,
Page 20.
page 20.
So what we have,
Go ahead.
so what we have in this 7-step program is the yellow highlighted column is the middle of the market. When we do our survey, we don't go out and we don't get an exact top, an exact bottom, an exact mid-market on every individual person. We get a range of dollar figures that come back. And what the consultant does is say that yellow represents the middle of the market for any particular position. And so
The middle of a band.
that's the middle of a band. So if you take customer service representative 1, grade 103, you see as you walk across there from step 1 to step 7, that there's about a $10 range per hour, starts at $26.94 an hour as an A step or 1 step. And at the end of the 7 step, they're at $36.44. And at 32.48, I'm sorry, 31.69, $31.69, that represents the middle of the market based on our survey. Some cities,
Halfway between that and the 30-10, where the edge of that band is.
and so it's a range. It's not an exact to the cent middle of the market. It's a range. And so someone can be a few cents less or a few cents more and still be in the middle of the market. Now, some agencies actually have a policy, a board policy, an adopted board policy that says we are going to pay 10% above median market. Or we're going to pay median market. That's what they say. Policy, it's an adopted policy. We don't have that policy here. But what the board has always done and what the personnel committee has always done is look at these, look at the comparables and say, what is a reasonable approach for setting the salaries for each individual position, and the range from step 1 to 7 for customer service 1 is $26.94 to $36.44. So that's the range and that's the policy that you would adopt. We do not have a thou shalt pay a middle mid-market or above mid-market. What we did for comparison purposes is to say, how do we compare based on this survey, based on this range of dollars? The green dots represent where each person in our district is actually paid in dollars and cents based on their range. So, but
The middle of their range, the top of their range, or
well, but it's a little bit, these green dots are not necessarily overpaid. They represent people maybe at step E. And so it's not like the position is overpaid. The person has achieved multiple steps. And so they're on the upper end of the step cycle. But generally it shows that our positions and our comparables, our pay is very competitive. We have a bunch of green dots and we have 3 red dots. 3 red dots represent positions that are slightly less than mid-market.
what we're going to be adopting is adjustments.
So what you would be adopting is the table of numbers, dollars.
Which one?
The,
Table.
it's on page 23. It doesn't have the yellow line and all the red and green dots. You would be adopting that as policy. You, the personnel committee, would be recommending to the board. We recommend that this is our new,
Haven't gone back and compare to these jobs with their existing salary compared to their full salary. Is anybody going to be reduced?
nobody's getting reduced. Nobody's getting reduced.
Is anybody going to get a boost?
2 positions are getting adjusted up.
I'd like to go back to page 18, where you have the three salary adjustment. Look at Project Manager 2, and then I go back to page 20,
So that would
and
put
it's talking about taking 63 to 66,
No,
page 18.
well, the median, the median market salary for project manager 2 in the yellow column is 6327.
Okay,
So the proposed adjustment would be taking the red dot up to the 6643.
Because we're on,
we're taking, the recommendation is to take someone who's top of step 2,
No,
move them to step 5.
the problem is that person is paid in step 2, but is actually in step 5. That's the problem, is that person's pay is actually low. They're actually in our system. They're in step 5. They're paid as a step 2.5. That person
By the market.
by the market. Their current salary is step 2.5. Their current position is step 5, but based on this survey, step 5 should be 6640.
Our scale for a project manager 2
Is low.
is below market.
Correct. Correct. Absolutely correct.
Okay,
So we would adopt the new scale, and then we would move that person, that red dot, to the step 5, which is what they're currently in.
since we're on page 18,
I don't see the assistant. Oh, there it is, top and bottom.
The same applies to that. You have a person who's in a higher step than.
Right. So once again, our scale for that job description
Is low.
is low.
Correct.
And that's those two.
Correct.
I see collection system operator 4 or senior treatment plant operator 3 as below the median.
Okay, that,
That's not because of our scale.
no, that red dot, that person is lower on the scale and just got promoted to a collection system 4, and in 6 months will get their probationary period step increase, and so they will move up a step in 6 months. So the scale is right. The person needs to spend 6 months in grade.
But the scale is right.
Scale is right. So that one doesn't change. That one will, if we did this in 6 months, that dot would be green.
It would be in the yellow band.
Be in the step 5 band. It would jump.
Okay.
I got a question for you. We're on page 18, recommendations. On the top of page 19, I think recommended salary adjustments for the project manager 2 and general manager. That's what this is general.
Yes.
The GM.
So only 2 people get raises now because the range is low based on the comparable.
But where our range is high,
Everything stays the same.
not going to penalize anyone for that. We had that works for me. When we had our last personnel committee meeting, we had 3 topics that we agreed should be taken forward. I think between overtime and double time. And standby time, we've covered two of those three.
Correct.
I was just looking back to the previous board or the previous committee packet. I could not find that list of three things. May have just overlooked it. But we talked about taking three things forward to the board.
We didn't decide those till the end of that meeting, so they'll be reflected in the minutes.
They were three things on a longer list than three.
Well, we had salaries, overtime, and standby time were the three things we were going to take to the board.
This is the salaries.
This was the salaries. Now, I am going to propose, getting ahead here a little bit, I am going to propose next week's personnel committee. We go through all of the holidays, vacation accruals, sick leave accruals, bereavement leave, all of those day sort of adoptions. And then in
Other paid days.
other paid days. And then at the board meeting, we take these three items and all of those paid day items to the board for approval. Now, normally, we have one resolution that adopts all our benefits. But there are some things in there that we kind of haven't come to a conclusion on. But I would like to try and get to the board about the things we can agree on and that you do have consensus on, and you do have sort of, a recommendation to the board to adopt and say, let's get these adopted and in place, and then start, continue to work on some of the things that maybe we want to spend more time on. I have an update on life insurance. We're not there yet, so some of those things maybe take another few meetings to work through.
Well, my feeling is that omnibus resolution tends to be one where a lot of details are overlooked or whatever. And particular if we're talking about areas where we have a consensus with general manager that certain benefits are not as high as they should be or as generous as they should be, we should make those corrections as quickly as possible. And if there's other stuff, we still need to talk through. And I remember there was a lot in that list the last meeting. I think we should continue to talk about it. I do think that if we're going to, we think appropriately increase the benefits in certain areas, we should do that as expeditiously as possible.
I can support that. The only
We need to understand what it costs.
question is what's a matter of budgeting. We have our budget set by a certain time and
Right.
we make our notifications to taxes and property.
And then we go back and continue to talk about things if we need to and make budget adjustments if we need to later on.
That's what you're saying too, right? You're saying
Well, I think,
taking the two steps.
yeah, I think,
Two,
yeah, there may be more than two. Normally what we've done is this one omnibus thing once a year, said, here's the benefits. Sometimes things change, sometimes they don't, but we adopt the whole benefits as a whole benefit package. And so there's a resolution, it's a formal board action. We approve these vacation days and these holidays and these pay rates and these standby rates. Everything's included in there. We've talked, that would be clean. One resolution, everything's on it. However, at this point, I don't see us having gone through all of the pieces of that one normal full resolution. And so we'll break it into pieces, and then at some point in the future, when everything has gotten way worked through, we'll do one resolution and say, we're bringing forward this first resolution, the second resolution, the third resolution into this, sort of complete resolution.
Confirming previously approved stuff.
So we get back to one thing, but we broke it into part A, B, and C maybe. That way, we spend the time we need to, and move forward with the things there is agreement on. And if there's more details on other things, well, that would follow. I think that's okay. We just need to have a resolution at some point in time that says, this is the standby rate legally adopted. This is the holiday list legally adopted. Each one of those pieces needs to show up on some legally adopted list so that there's a legislative approval of that piece. But I would bring,
Should be doing things.
right, I would bring this forward to the board with probably next week's list of days, vacation, holiday, sick, bereavement, you know, those sorts of things, if there's consensus on those. And then bring that all to the board in March. And then also in March, which is a little bit earlier, have a 30,000-foot look at the budget. We're not going to get into line by line, you know, how many gallons of chemicals and pencils and tires and everything. We're going to talk about the big picture, you know, where we are, where I see things moving. Any thoughts and discussion on where we need to go. And this will be a part of it. It's a business decision. It needs to be thoroughly vetted, but you know, let's maybe, you know, take the win on these items and then keep working on the ones where we still have some questions and some discussion.
Yeah, good. Works for me.
I mean, considering we've had this massive study, classification and comp study, and the results are new, that we have a funded deadline, and I'm okay with breaking things up, and I don't think there's no embarrassment in that at all.
I kind of like the idea because it tells me that we have spent the appropriate amount of time looking at all the pieces. If we're given 1,200-page document that is the resolution that covers everything to the end of time, and we have to decide it tonight because next month's meeting is too late, I don't like that kind of pressure to make policy decisions. I'd rather make good policy decisions now and good policy decisions when we next have the chance, look at them appropriately and do it as expeditiously as we can, but take the time, do each thing, and as we reach agreement on a policy position, move it forward. Don't hold it. Good enough is the enemy of perfect. And perfect may be deciding everything, but good enough is maybe getting things done as quickly as we can and implementing them as we go along. That's the way I would prefer to do it.
In the right direction.
I think so.
I think we've spent more time on this than we ever have in any of these other classification studies. I think it is time that's well spent.
Agree.
We're gonna have something that's
I particularly like the exchange information with LCW. Very illuminating. I think we're on the right side of things. We go forward with their recommendations. So page 20.
So if that's the direction from the committee, we'll take these three items and put them on
Or the new chart.
the agenda for March's board meeting. I'll bring back another meeting next week to talk about all the day structures. And then if there's consensus on those, we'll add those to the March meeting. Then we'll have the consultant, we'll give a Zoom presentation on the whole report. You've seen the whole report essentially in all of this classification stuff, in the compensation stuff, and in all the benefit sort of tables that we compared to. But it'll be all done and they'll give a full presentation to the board.
You might want to add a couple whereases to that resolution, 'cause that's the shortest resolution I've ever seen. Be it resolved. Not the whereases. Planning on fattening them?
I mean, that's the one that they've been using for years. I just.
Okay, I give up.
Forward.
Never mind, I said.
Whereas Jim wanted 3 whereases, so we're gonna have.
I'm used to seeing them that say, whereas the Ojai Valley Sanitary District, under the purview of this law, provides sanitary services to the district.
Well, we can certainly do that.
If this is the one we do, then we don't need it. I just.
Short and sweet is good.
Okay, so that's, so we'll bring those,
You're getting everything you asked for, right, Jeff?
well, I think we've spent a lot of time and we appreciate the conversation and discussion. And I think there's, you know, some good stuff that's come out of these discussions so far, and we're seeing it, you know, in a couple of actual policies that are going to get updated and amended to provide better benefits. I think that's good.
The 18th is off of our normal schedule, but is everybody available next Monday? Anybody have time limitations?
Next Mondays.
Figure yourself one of these paper
As
daytime.
long as we can close by 6:30,
I'm good on the 18th.
have a 7 o'clock on the 18th.
Do that away whenever.
Can't afford it. This is my whole brain right here.
So Jim,
So we're gonna add a 4 o'clock meeting on the 17th, 18th, excuse me, yes.
What Bex was her door.
Is that Jeff?
oh, I was gonna wait till, let the chair. Let's see, kind of go on to the next step.
To the agenda here. Yes, okay. Reports. Any reports? Anybody have anything to add? 7A?
Report.
Is that include the general manager's general report? Pardon me.
That comes right after committee members.
Are you asking me? Oh,
I'm asking, do you have anything else that you would like to add to the administrative record of this meeting?
I just wanted to let you guys know that Mr. Kwong and I have exchanged a couple of memos and memos, and I have made a list of questions for him and meet. I just let you guys know. I don't know what this is, but my bylaws say I cannot speak to a legal counsel without either board approval, okey dokey for the board chairman. I called.
He okey dokeyed you.
Boy,
I okey dokey.
so I just want to let you guys know we're going to work that out.
Well, those conversations are reportable. Because they will have, they on duties of a committee member or a board member, and they took place outside the public view.
Okay.
Right? General manager comments?
I just wanted to bring, Jim, you asked about life insurance and I wanted to let you, the committee know where we were. So we contacted our life insurance group. They said, well, first of all, your policy's up in November, so we'll talk to you in November.
We're still preparing the new rates.
Yeah, we're still preparing the new rates. The second thing they said is, at the time we talk about the policy, you need to do a full new census. Basically determine how many employees, the age of the employees and any particulars. And we'll give them,
Your mortality tables.
and then we'll give them a range of potential life insurance levels and get those proposals back. I'm not sure we're gonna have to wait all the way till November, but we may have to wait a little bit of time. So I'm not sure that that one item is something that we're going to be able to sort of get the information, get back to you, have a discussion, have alternatives, sort of chew through some discussion here in the next month or two. It may take longer, but if so, we'll keep that on the burner as something we continue to work on.
Did they say anything was possible or is?
They wouldn't say, we go through a broker, so they essentially take the facts that we give them and disperse it out and see sort of who the takers are and what the conditions are.
Insurance agent.
Yeah. So they really wouldn't say, and they wouldn't say, they pretty much, the only thing we got is most people won't, your current underwriter will not change your policy midterm. Anybody who looks at it will want to review new census data. And so they provided me with that format of how to provide that data. And then but we told them what options that we wanted them to explore as far as increasing levels potentially. So what would be available, if any of them would be open to the option of employees being able to purchase additional amounts of insurance under the policy. And so they're aware that that's something that we want to explore. So they'll look into that as well and see what options might exist with different underwriters that provide that if possible.
Okay, well, thank you for starting looking at that. Appreciate that.
Does CalPERS have a life insurance?
Not that I'm aware, not that I'm aware of. We've inquired a number of times to CalPERS about.
Preferred provider even?
Yeah, they stayed away from that. We asked them to look into a while back, long-term care, in-home nursing care, some of those things, and they just said,
They had like a moratorium on that option now or something.
those programs are so volatile in terms of cost that, they've really shied away from being a service provider. Hey, use us to get the services you need, but it turned into, here's the services we will offer. If you want them, you can buy them, and here's the price.
That's based on some third party
Yes.
they have adopted.
Right.
For that service.
Right.
I'm just surprised they didn't do that with life insurance.
Just when you can't even buy insurance anymore, you come to a checkbook to an insurance agent, they don't want to talk to you for 6 months. I'm amazed.
I'm used to that. Run a small business.
So that's all I have.
Okay. Anything else?
I just had one question for staff, and I probably know the answer, but I'm just gonna see if we had gotten any surveys back at this point.
We've none back.
Back, okay, thank you.
The deadline for that was another couple of weeks.
End of the month.
All right.
Yeah, for the board.
Very good. And at 5:23. Adjourned. Thank you.